The last box was not heavy. I want to say that because it matters. The previous 11 boxes had been heavy, books mostly, and the specific dense weight of someone's accumulated life being carried from one place to another. I had moved them up a flight and a half of stairs in the August heat with the wordless commitment of a person who had said yes and intended to mean it. And by the 11th box, my shirt was damp, and my arms had made their opinion clear, and I was, in the technical sense, done. The 12th box was light. I picked it up from the back of the moving van, and it had almost nothing in it. I could feel the contents shift, something soft and unresisting, and I carried it up the stairs and set it on her kitchen floor with the others, and I straightened up and looked at her and said, "I think that's everything." She was standing by the window. She had been by the window for the last 2 boxes, watching me carry rather than carrying, which I had noticed and not mentioned, because it was her move and she could distribute the labor however she chose. She was looking at the box. Then she looked at me. She said, "Now stay." Not the way you say stay for a drink or stay for dinner. The way you say a thing you have been holding in your mouth for longer than the move, longer than the boxes, longer than August. The way you say something that is not about the immediate logistics at all. I set my hands in my pockets. "Okay," I said. She exhaled. Very quietly, the way a person exhales when they have been holding their breath for a while and have finally been given permission to stop. My name is Marcus Tully. I am 36 years old. I teach secondary school English, which means I spend my days in the company of people who are learning how language works, and my evenings in the company of language that has already done what it intended, which is a reasonable way to live. I live in the same building I have lived in for 4 years, on the 2nd floor, in an apartment with a kitchen I use well, and a reading chair I use more than is probably warranted. I was not looking for anything. I had been not looking for long enough that it had become a state rather than a condition. Not unhappy, not searching, just settled in the particular way that describes a life that has found its shape. Her name was Clara Reyes. She was 32. She worked in conservation science, the long, patient work of preserving things that would otherwise be lost. Manuscripts, primarily, though she had explained once that the category was broader than that it was anything with enough history to be worth keeping. She had the careful hands of someone whose work required not disturbing the thing being handled, and a way of reading a room with the same attention she brought to fragile objects. Patient, unhurried, noting damage without alarming anyone. She had moved in 8 months ago. 3rd floor, 3C. I was 2B, directly below. We had met in the way neighbors meet. The elevator, the mailboxes, the specific moment in the hallway when both people are clearly going to the same door and there is nothing to do but acknowledge each other. She had a key in her hand and a bag over one shoulder, and she had looked at me with the direct assessment of someone who decides quickly and said, "I just moved in." 3C, I had said. 2B. Marcus. She had said Clara, and put the key in the door and gone inside. It had taken 3 weeks to progress beyond that. Not because either of us was unfriendly, but because we were both people who did not force things, who let the pace of something be determined by the thing itself rather than by impatience. The progression had been gradual. The elevator became a place where we talked rather than stood in parallel. The hallway became somewhere we slowed down. By month 2, she had knocked on my door to ask if I had a Phillips head screwdriver, and I had had one, and she had returned it 40 minutes later with a specific gravity that suggested the screwdriver had not been the only reason she had knocked. She had a small cactus on her windowsill that she had named, she mentioned once, Gerald. She did not elaborate on Gerald. I had not asked, sensing that Gerald occupied a category of private that was also comfortable. The kind of private a person maintains, not because they are hiding something, but because some things are simply theirs. She had a way of pausing before she answered questions, not hesitating, pausing, which is different. A pause means the question was worth the full weight of an honest answer. She paused before answers the way conservators examine things before touching them. I had noticed this in the first month and had found it, quietly and completely, remarkable. The dynamic between us had been building for 8 months, in the manner of buildings that don't have a cornerstone ceremony, incrementally, without announcement, each piece resting on the one before. Coffee in the hallway that became coffee at my door, that became coffee inside. A book I had mentioned offhand that appeared outside my apartment one morning with a note in her handwriting. Tuesday evenings that had developed, without either of us designing them, into a standing arrangement where she came downstairs and I made dinner, and we talked until it was later than Tuesday evenings had any obligation to be. I had not named what we were doing. Neither had she. The name felt like the kind of thing that, said too early, changes the thing it describes. Her signature was a small folding ruler she kept in her jacket pocket. Conservation work, she had explained, required constant measurement. You needed to know the size of what you were handling before you touched it. She brought it everywhere. I had seen it on restaurant tables, on my kitchen counter, balanced on the arm of my reading chair. She measured things with the ruler that did not obviously require measuring, and I had come to understand that this was not a professional habit carried over, but a way of engaging with the world, establishing dimensions before contact, knowing the scale of a thing before deciding how to handle it. She had been measuring, I understood later, in ways that were not about rulers. The move was because her lease in 3C had ended, and the apartment on the 3rd floor of the building next door, 3A, same sun, better closets, 20 feet of lateral distance, had opened up, and she had taken it. The buildings shared a courtyard. The new apartment was, by any practical measure, nearly identical to the old one. I had helped her do a walkthrough before she signed. I had not said what I thought about the distance, or the lack of it, or what it meant that when she described the new apartment she had said, without looking at me, "It's close." I had filed that. The move was a Saturday in August. She had rented a van. I had said I would help. It had not occurred to either of us that this would be otherwise. The morning had been practical and warm in the way that August mornings are warm before they become August afternoons, and we had moved through the loading with a competence that comes from people who do not waste motion. She knew where everything was, and I knew how to carry it, and we had worked in the easy parallel of two people who had developed a vocabulary of being in the same space without requiring constant coordination. By noon, the van was full. By 2, the new apartment had everything in it. The 11 boxes had been the last stage. Books, mostly, though one had been files, and one had been the kind of kitchen equipment that is dense enough to suggest someone who uses their kitchen seriously. I had moved them with the thorough commitment of someone who had said yes and understood what yes meant, and she had directed traffic at the top of the stairs, and by the last one I was comprehensively finished. Except the last one was light. I set it down. I straightened up. "That's everything," I said. She was at the window. The new apartment looked out on the courtyard, and beyond it the building we had both just left, and she was looking at something in that direction, or something she was holding in her own head, the way she sometimes looked out windows without actually looking out windows. She looked at the box, then at me. "Now stay." 2 words. The weight of the whole 8 months in them. I put my hands in my pockets and said okay, and she exhaled, and August came through the window, and the new apartment had all her boxes in it, and Gerald the cactus on the sill, and she was looking at me the way she looked at things she was about to handle very carefully. I was familiar with that look by now. It made a certain amount of sense. She made tea. This was significant because she made coffee in the morning and tea in the afternoons when she was settling into something. I had cataloged this over 8 months in the way you catalog things you pay attention to without announcing the attention. She filled the kettle and set it on the stove and moved through her new kitchen with the careful orientation of someone learning the dimensions of a space, opening a cabinet, finding it had the mugs where she expected mugs to be, opening another for the tea. I leaned against the counter and watched her learn her new kitchen and did not say anything because nothing needed to be said yet, and I had learned, in 8 months of knowing her, that with Clara the timing of things mattered as much as the things themselves. "Gerald made it," I said, because Gerald was on the windowsill, and this felt like information worth acknowledging. "Gerald always makes it," she said. "He seems resilient. He's a cactus," she said. "Resilience is the whole point." She poured the water over the tea and brought both mugs to the kitchen table, a small table, 2 chairs, positioned by the window, and sat down. I sat across from her. Outside, the courtyard was in late afternoon light. She wrapped both hands around her mug. "I've been thinking," she said, "about how to say something. For a while now." "How long is a while?" I said. "Longer than I'm going to admit to immediately," she said. She pulled the small ruler from her jacket pocket, set it on the table between us. She looked at it, then at me, with the expression she used when she was being deliberate. "I measured the distance," she said, "between the buildings when I was deciding whether to take the apartment." 22 feet, I said. "Courtyard to courtyard." She looked at me. "I measured it too," I said. A small pause, the kind with weight. "When did you measure it?" she said. "The day you mentioned the apartment," I said. "I went outside after you left and I measured it and I came back in and I stood in my kitchen for approximately 10 minutes. "Doing what?" she said. "Deciding," I said, what it meant that I had just gone outside to measure the distance between buildings like a person who has a reason to care about the distance between buildings. She looked at the ruler, then at me. "What did you decide?" she said. "I decided I had a reason," I said. She picked up the ruler, turned it once in her hands, the way she handled things when she was thinking, the same motion she used with objects she was assessing. She set it down parallel to the edge of the table, which was something she did when she had made a decision about something. "The 12th box," she said. "Yes," I said. "It has one thing in it," she said. I looked at the box on the kitchen floor, the light one. I had noticed on the stairs that it had almost nothing in it. "What's in it?" I said. She was quiet for a moment. "I packed it last night," she said, "after I had everything else ready." I sat on the floor in 3C, and I thought about whether I was going to say something today, or let it be another day when I didn't, and I decided I needed a mechanism. She looked at the box. "So I packed one thing, and I made it the last box, and I decided that when you put it down, I was going to say what I should have said a while ago. I thought about the 11 heavy boxes and the one light one. I thought about the deliberateness of that. Packing a box with one thing in it, making it the last one, engineering a moment with the same care she used for fragile objects. "Now stay," I said. "Now stay," she said. "What's in it?" I said again. She got up from the table. She went to the box and she opened the top and she reached in and she brought out the book. I recognized it before she turned it over, the size, the soft cover, the worn edge of the spine. It was the book I had mentioned to her in month 2, the one that had appeared outside my apartment one morning. She had returned it in month 3 after I told her she should read it, and I had thought she'd kept a copy, but she hadn't kept a copy. She had kept the copy. Mine. "I've been meaning to give this back," she said. She held it out to me across the kitchen, across the small table, across 8 months of Tuesday evenings, and measured distances and pauses that contained honest answers. I didn't take it. "Keep it," I said. She looked at the book, then at me. The careful handling expression had shifted into something less armored and considerably warmer. "Marcus," she said. "You've had it for 6 months," I said. "At this point, it's yours." "That's not what you mean," she said. "No," I said. "It's not." I stood up from the table. The afternoon light was doing what August afternoon light does in rooms with west-facing windows, going golden and long. I crossed the kitchen, which was not very far. I stopped in front of her. She was still holding the book. "I measured the distance," I said, "because I wanted to know how far away you were going. And when I found out it was 22 feet, I stood in my kitchen for 10 minutes. Because 22 feet is not far, and I had been managing the situation by telling myself you were a neighbor. And that was the category. And that categories have edges. And 22 feet is not far enough for a category to have an edge," she said. "No," I said, "it's not." She set the book on the table. She put the ruler beside it, parallel to the edge, the way she put it when something was settled. "I came downstairs on Tuesdays," she said, "because Tuesdays are when I stop working early enough to actually have an evening. And then at some point Tuesdays became the thing I worked toward. And then I realized I was planning my weeks around your kitchen, and I told myself that was what close friends did. Because close friends did do that, and the category held for a while. Until it didn't," I said. "Until the apartment," she said, "when I measured 22 feet and thought that's close enough, and then had to ask myself close enough for what?" "What was the answer?" I said. She looked at me with the directness she looked at everything she was about to be precise about. "For this," she said. I put my hand against her face the way you do something when you want to be certain the other person has every opportunity to indicate otherwise. She turned into it just slightly, the way a person leans toward something they have been waiting for, and she said quietly, with the last of the composure, "I should have given you the book back sooner." "You gave it back at exactly the right time," I said. "I engineered the moment," she said. "With a light box." "I know," I said. "It was extremely well done." She laughed, briefly, surprised. The real version that arrived before the considered version could review it. I kissed her then, in her new kitchen with Gerald on the windowsill and 12 boxes on the floor, and a book on the table between us that was not really about the book, and she had both hands on the front of my shirt, and the August light came through the window, and it was the most natural ending to a Tuesday I could imagine. Except it was Saturday, which meant we had the rest of the week still ahead of us. She pulled back. She looked at me with an expression I had not seen before, open and unmanaged, the expression of someone who has been careful for a long time and has finally decided to set the careful down. "You're staying," she said. "That was the arrangement," I said. "I didn't know if you'd say yes," she said. "Clara," I said, "I moved 11 boxes of books up a flight and a half of stairs in August." She looked at me. "That's not a declaration," she said. "No," I said. "But it was a pretty clear indication." She picked up the ruler from the table and put it back in her jacket pocket. Then she picked up her tea. She gestured at my tea, which had gone mostly cold. "I'll make another cup," she said. "That one's fine," I said. "It's cold," she said. "I don't mind," I said. She made another cup anyway. This was, I understood, the beginning of something that had been building for 8 months and was now being allowed to be what it had always been tending toward. She made the tea and I sat at her table in her new kitchen, 22 feet from where we had both lived, and she sat across from me, and we finished the day the way Tuesdays usually finished, except It was Saturday, and the boxes still needed unpacking, and neither of us was going anywhere. I stayed until the boxes were unpacked. Not that night, over the following week, in the evenings, with the easy parallel we had developed for being in the same space. She had a system for unpacking that was methodical and efficient. And I had an opinion about where the books should go that she disagreed with, and we had this disagreement across 3 evenings in a way that was comfortable and not particularly about the books. The book, mine, hers, the one that had been in the light box, ended up on her shelf. I had put it there on the second evening, in the gap she had clearly left for it, and she had seen me do it and not said anything, which was its own kind of sentence. 6 months later, I knew Gerald's origin story. She told me on a Sunday morning at my kitchen table, unprompted, in the way she shared things when she had decided they were no longer just hers. Gerald had been a gift from a colleague when she started her first conservation job, presented as a joke about preservation, and she had kept him for 4 years through 3 apartments, because something about that felt right to her. Keeping the thing that had been given in the spirit of keeping things. I said, "That's a good reason to keep something." She looked at her coffee. "Yes," she said, "it is." 2 years later, when people asked about us, I told them. I helped her move 12 boxes and the last one had almost nothing in it, and when I put it down, she told me to stay. I always said it the way it had happened, plainly, because the plain version was the whole story. She always added, the box had 1 book in it. People always asked which book. She always said, one I'd been holding on to. She never said how long she'd been holding on to it. I knew. She knew I knew that it had become one of those private things that are not secrets, but simply ours. The knowledge of how long both of us had been carrying something before we put it down in each other's direction and said, "Here, this is yours. I've been meaning to give it back. Now stay." Some things you carry for longer than necessary. Some things are patient enough to wait. What would you have done? Would you have said stay, or would you have let the moment go and hope for a cleaner one? And have you ever held on to something that belonged to someone else longer than you meant to, and understood, too late or just in time, why you hadn't given it back? Tell me in the comments. If this one stayed with you, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.